Jake had worked with aliens before, but none like her. Rika was tall, proud, and sharp as a blade. She was from the Zarnok species' strong warriors with silver-blue skin and glowing eyes. They rarely showed emotions, but they were known for being calm. Rika was calm too at that moment. The mining station floated near the rings of a dead planet. Humans and aliens worked side by side to extract rare minerals. Jake was one of the only humans stationed here. He'd been assigned to the control room with Rika. Most of the time, it was quiet between them. She gave orders. He followed them. Today was different. Jake was fixing a faulty power relay while Rika checked system data. Trying to break the silence, Jake smiled and said, "You know, you kind of remind me of my friend Anna back on Earth. She used to glare at me the same way." He chuckled to himself. Not expecting much of a reaction, but Rika froze. Her fingers curled slowly into fists. Her eyes narrowed not in confusion, but rage. Jake didn't notice at first. He kept talking. "She always said I was stubborn. Maybe that's just a universal thing between coworkers, huh?" Suddenly, a loud crash shook the control room. Rika had slammed her fist into the main panel. Sparks flew from the broken interface. Alarms started blinking. Jake jumped back, shocked. What the hell was that? He shouted. Rika didn't answer. She turned to him slowly, her jaw tight, her eyes glowing brighter. The room fell silent except for the flickering lights and humming systems. Crew members nearby looked in, stunned, but said nothing. No one dared approach. Jake stood frozen, his heart pounding. He had seen her angry during drills, but never like this. Her whole body trembled, like she was trying to hold something back. For a second, Jake thought she might attack him, but instead, she spun around and stormed out of the room, leaving the broken panel sparking behind. The station commander arrived minutes later, furious. What happened here? Jake, still confused, tried to explain. "I said something about a friend from Earth, and she just lost it." The commander shook his head, looking worried. "You have no idea what you just triggered, do you?" Jake blinked. "No, I was just talking, trying to be friendly." "She's Zarnak," the commander said, "and Zarnak females during bonding season are sensitive, especially about names of rivals." Jake frowned. "Rival?" "I mentioned Anna as a friend, not anything else." The commander sighed. "To her, you just declared someone else might be your chosen bond." "And she she reacted." Jake's mouth went dry. He wasn't trying to flirt. He wasn't even thinking that way, but it didn't matter. The damage was done later. Jake was told he'd be working with Rika again in the lower maintenance chamber where they had to repair the broken systems together. "Great," Jake muttered. "Lock me in a room with someone who wants to tear my head off." The crew laughed nervously, but no one volunteered to switch shifts with him. He walked down the narrow hallway to the maintenance level, carrying his tools. The door opened with a heavy hiss, and there she was, already waiting. Rika didn't look at him. She was staring at a broken circuit panel, jaw still clenched. Jake stepped inside and the door sealed behind him. There was no going back. He cleared his throat, trying to speak. "Look, I didn't mean anything bad earlier. I was just making conversation." Still, no answer. She tightened a screw on the circuit board so hard it snapped. Jake winced. "You really don't like hearing about other women, huh?" He joked nervously. Rika slowly turned her head. This time, she spoke. "Say her name again, and I will crush this panel over your head." Her voice was low, calm but deadly. Jake raised his hands. Okay. Not another word. Silence returned. But now it was heavy. He looked around the room. No cameras, no escape. Only her. And him and broken systems they had to fix together. And something told Jake. The real problem wasn't the circuits anymore. Something had started, something strange. Powerful and dangerous. He just didn't understand what it was yet, but he was about to find out. Jake stood in the small chamber, not moving, not breathing. Too loud, Rika didn't look at him, but he could feel her presence like heat from a furnace. The air between them was heavy, thicker than the silence. The broken systems blinked in soft red light. And somewhere above, a faint alarm beeped every 10 seconds. Jake glanced at the sealed door behind him, knowing it wouldn't open until they fixed the controls. He walked slowly toward the backup console, careful not to make sudden movements. "I'll fix the wiring," he said quietly, hoping to avoid another explosion of anger. Rika didn't respond, but she moved to the opposite side of the panel, starting to connect loose circuits. Her hands moved fast, sharp, but there was tension in her every motion, like a storm hiding in her skin. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe 20. And not a single word was spoken. Jake's fingers trembled slightly as he worked. Not because of fear, but confusion. He didn't know what was worse, her anger or her silence. He wanted to understand, to ask her why that one name made her so mad. But he held back, sensing he'd step on another live wire. A soft spark jumped from the wires, lighting her face in a brief flash. Jake caught her eyes for a second, and what he saw wasn't hate, it was something else, something wild, unsure, maybe even afraid. It made his chest tighten. "I'm not bonded," she finally said, her voice dry and distant. Jake looked up. "What?" Rika stared at the panel, not meeting his eyes. "I have no bond partner. No chosen one," she said again, more slowly. Jake nodded slowly, still confused. "Okay. Ah, same here, not bonded either. If that means single." Silence again. Then she leaned back from the panel, resting her hands on her knees. "Zarnok females feel the bond before the males do," she said, her voice soft now. Like a whisper. When it starts, it's like heat, but inside the mind, not the body. Jake frowned. "You mean emotions?" She hesitated. "Yes, maybe it's not common for us. We're trained to resist it, to stay focused. But when the bond is triggered, it's hard to control." Jake swallowed, the weight of her words slowly sinking in. He hadn't just said something dumb earlier. He had set off something deep inside her. Something sacred to her people. And he did it by accident. "I didn't mean to challenge anyone," Jake said softly. "Anna is just a friend. She's thousands of miles away." On Earth, Rika's fingers tightened around a metal tool until it bent slightly. "You spoke her name during a cycle of bonding," she whispered to us. "That's like saying you choose another right in front of me." Jake sat back slowly, realizing the full meaning. "You thought I was rejecting you." Rika didn't answer, but her silence was enough. He looked at her again, seeing more than just the cold soldier. She was breathing hard now, her chest rising and falling faster. Her fingers shook slightly, even though she tried to hide it. She wasn't just angry, she was overwhelmed. The console flickered again, and something beeped behind the wall. Jake stood up and reached toward the emergency power switch. He paused, his hand on the lever. "Why me?" he asked quietly, not turning to face her. "There are other Zarnok males here, stronger, faster, more like you. Why would you?" She answered before he could finish. "Because you laugh," she said, her voice a little louder. "You smile. When the lights go dim, you joke, even when your hands bleed. And you treat me like I'm more than just a warrior." Jake turned his head slowly. Meeting her eyes again, there was no armor in them now. No rage, only truth. "You don't scare me," he said gently. Rika blinked, as if his words were a slap and a hug at the same time. The chamber suddenly shook. Lights flickered again, and a warning siren buzzed deep below their feet. Jake rushed to the panel. "We've got another short circuit. If we don't stabilize this, the autolock might trap us in here for hours." Rika joined him, the moment of honesty fading as they both focused on the task. Still, something between them had changed. Something deep and fragile had cracked open. And in the middle of flickering lights, failing systems, and unspoken words, Jake knew this was no longer about fixing circuits. He was inside something far more dangerous than a broken panel. He was inside her walls. And now, there was no way back out. The chamber lights flickered again, casting moving shadows across the walls. Jake's hands were deep inside a hot junction box, wires twitching like nervous fingers. Across from him, Rika was silent, focused. But her breathing gave her away. It had become uneven, like someone holding back too many thoughts at once. They had repaired most of the circuits, but the final override code wasn't working. The system wasn't locked because of a fault that had been manually blocked from the outside. Jake leaned back, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Someone doesn't want us to leave," he whispered. Mostly to himself, Rika didn't respond. But he knew she felt it too. The lights dimmed for a moment, and in the half-dark, Jake noticed Rika staring not at the wires, but at him. There was something in her gaze, something more than tension or confusion. Jake sat on the floor, tired, his back against a metal pipe. "You okay?" he asked. Careful. Rika slowly sat down across from him, resting her arms on her knees. "I don't know," she said after a pause. "I was trained to be strong, cold, focused, but I'm not anymore. Not when I'm around you." Jake's mouth felt dry. He didn't know what to say. This alien woman, who once stared at him like a target, now looked at him like he was the only thing real in her world. "I don't want to be your weakness," he said gently. She shook her head. "You're not." She whispered, "You're the only one who makes me feel like I have more than duty." For a long moment, they just sat there in silence, two beings from different worlds, understanding something without speaking it. Then Rika spoke again, her voice even softer. "I wasn't born in the warrior caste." Jake blinked. "You weren't?" She shook her head. "I was raised in the scented chambers, meant to serve nobles, not fight wars. I was chosen for reconditioning, reshaped, trained, forced into soldierhood. But it's never left me." Jake listened, heart sinking so all. "This coldness," he said slowly, "it was made, not natural." Rika nodded. "I only know how to obey, how to hit things, break things. But when I saw you fix a power cable with your bare hands and laugh at your own pain, I felt something strange." Jake smiled a little. "That wasn't bravery. That was just me being stupid." She looked at him with an odd warmth in her eyes. "No, that was courage in a way I've never seen." The wall monitor suddenly beeped and flashed red. A signal came through a pulse transmission from the outer deck. Jake stood up quickly and walked over. "It's encrypted, but the ID code matches." "Yours," he said, looking back at her. Rika walked over, her face going stiff again. "It's them," she said darkly. "My former squad." Jake frowned. Why would they be sending encrypted signals to a locked chamber? "Are coming," she said quietly. "Not to rescue us, they think. I've broken protocol by choosing a bond without approval." Jake stared at her. "You mean?" "Me, yes," she said. "They think you've tainted me, that I've become something soft." Jake ran a hand through his hair. "So we're not just locked in, we're being hunted." Before she could answer, the emergency lights turned blue, a signal only used when someone had entered the station without permission. Rika turned and picked up a large spanner like it was a blade. Jake looked at the door. "They're already inside, aren't they?" Rika nodded. "They won't talk. They'll test me. Test if I'll stand beside you or against you." Jake stepped beside her. "And what will you do?" She turned to him slowly. "I don't know yet," she whispered, "but I know I'm not the same Zarnak who walked into this room." Then the chamber lights shut off completely, and only the emergency glow remained outside. Metal boots echoed in the hallway. Drawing closer, Jake held his breath, He was about to face an enemy he didn't understand, but beside him stood someone who no longer followed orders. She was no longer just angry or confused. She was awake, and that made her even more dangerous. Matially? To those who came to control her asterisk. The metal boots outside stopped right in front of the sealed chamber door. Jake and Rika stood in silence, side by side. Shadows dancing across their faces as the red glow flickered overhead. Rika's grip on the spanner tightened, her knuckles pale blue under her skin. Jake could feel her tension like heat in the air. A small hiss came from the wall. Console, the override was being forced from the outside. Whoever was out there wasn't waiting for permission. Jake took a step back and whispered, "What if they're not just here for you?" Rika didn't answer, her eyes locked on the door like a predator preparing for a fight. The airlock bolts clicked once, twice, then stops. Silence. Jake's heart raced. No one entered. Dead. The room lights blinked wildly, the backup systems buzzed, and shorted static filled the comm lines. Then came a strange sound, not metal, not mechanical, a low hum, almost like a song, a melody that echoed through the floor. Jake looked at Rika. "What is that?" Her face had gone pale. "That's not Zarnok tech," she whispered. "That's old, very old." Suddenly, the chamber door didn't open. It melted, not fast, not loud, but slow. Like paper curling and fire, metal edges turned black and crumbled into ash. Jake grabbed a small welding torch and stepped in front of Rika. But she pushed past him. "No," she said, her voice sharp and deep. "This is for me to face, on the other side of the melting door." There was no one, just a mist, thick, pale green, with glowing particles drifting like fireflies. Jake's skin prickled. This wasn't just an ambush, this was something else. From within the mist came a figure, not tall like Rika, shorter, wrapped in a dark suit that shimmered. Its face was covered, and it moved with no sound. Jake's voice cracked. "That's not one of your kind." Rika took a step forward, but the figure raised a single hand. Then it spoke, but not out loud. Words echoed inside Jake's head. "Cold and strange, she has touched forbidden frequencies. She is changed, she must be taken," Rika growled. A deep sound from her chest. "No one takes me," she hissed. "I choose who I bond with." The figure took one more step. "You are unstable. You will collapse or destroy. You must be corrected." Jake couldn't move. He felt the voice inside his mind, like fingers clawing through thoughts. But Rika stood tall, unshaken. She raised her hand and slammed the spanner into the ground. Sparks flew. "I am not broken," she shouted. "I am awakening." The figure didn't flinch, but the mist began to fade. The particles drifted up and vanished like dust in sunlight. Then the figure spoke one last time. "We will return for her." And it disappeared. No sound, no flash. Just gone. The hallway was clear again. The door was gone, melted into nothing. The emergency lights returned to normal glow. The air was still. Jake stared at Rika. What the hell was that? Rika's chest rose and fell slowly. "That was something ancient," she said quietly. "A watcher from before our time." Jake shook his head. "I thought your squad was coming for you." Rika nodded. "They still might, but now something worse knows who." "I am." Jake stepped beside her. "We'll deal with it." Rika turned her head toward him. "Why do you stay?" she asked softly. "You should be running." Jake gave a crooked smile. "Because I think you're worth fighting for. Even if you're part mystery and part monster." Her eyes didn't glow this time. They softened, and for a second, Rika looked almost human. Then the comm panel behind them came to life again. A voice crackled through. This time, a familiar one. "This is Control. We lost your signal for 13 minutes. Report status?" Jake looked around. Chamber melted. Ghost visitor emotional truth bombs dropped. He pressed the button. "We've got a situation," he said, "and it's not over yet." The hallway felt colder than before. Jake stepped out slowly, his boots crunching over the ashes of what used to be the chamber door. Rika followed close behind. silent, alert. Her eyes scanning every shadow. The station was too quiet to still. Even the normal hum of the engines sounded distant. Like it was holding its breath. They reached the main corridor, and the moment they stepped in, the lights above flickered once, then twice, then stayed dim. Jake glanced at the control screen mounted on the wall. It was still connected. But not to the station's core. Another source was feeding commands into the system. An external override, unauthorized. Someone's hijacked the station's network. Jake muttered. He turned to Rika. You think it's your squad? She didn't answer right away. Her jaw clenched. Eyes narrowed. No. She finally said, if it were them, the lights would be red by now. Jake frowned. Red means what? It means purge, she replied. No survivors, no records, no mercy. Jake's stomach dropped. Great. And what does dim white mean? Rika's voice lowered. It means we're being watched. A sharp, metallic noise echoed behind them. Both turned fast. Nothing there. Just the empty hallway. Jake reached for his tool belt. No weapons, only a scanner and a plasma torch. He looked at Rika. She already had her spanner raised. Her stance like a coiled spring. Then came the footsteps, heavy, measured, not rushed, like the person knew exactly where they were going and didn't need to hurry from the far corridor ahead. 3 figures appeared, not cloaked in mist. This time, no. Ancient shimmer. These were Zarnok warriors in full armor, tall, sharp, deadly. Jake backed up Rika. Didn't she? Stepped forward. Her shoulders squared. Her voice was clear and calm. You don't belong here. The lead warrior stopped, his helmet reflecting the pale light. You broke formation, Commander. He said you bonded without the right. Jake blinked. She's a commander, he whispered to himself. No one had told him that. Trika didn't move. I made a choice. She said, that is my right. Even without approval, the warrior stepped closer. You were reconditioned to serve the caste, not follow your instincts. You dishonor the bond by sharing it with a weaker species. Jake stepped forward. Hey, he said, right here, still breathing, not so weak. The second warrior raised his weapon. Rika stepped in front of Jake in one sharp motion. You raise a weapon at him. You raise it at me. The third warrior spoke. Now his voice was colder than the others. Then you are one of them now. Without warning, he lunged. Rika blocked the strike with her spanner. Sparks flew. Metal clang. Jake jumped back. Heart pounding. The hallway turned into chaos. Rika moved like a storm, blocking, striking, spinning. Every motion had weight and speed. The warriors attacked in unison. She held them off, but barely. Jake knew she was stronger than most, but not stronger than 3 fully armed Zarnok fighters. He grabbed the nearest control panel and started typing, overriding doors, activating defense systems. By Intima, loud hiss filled the air. Gas vents opened from the floor. White mist rolled in. Rika knocked one warrior to the ground. Another tackled her from behind. Jake screamed, stop, but no one heard him. He grabbed the plasma torch and ran forward, not thinking, just moving. He aimed the flame at the warrior holding Rika and shouted, back off. The warrior turned. Jake swung the torch. Hit armor, barely left a mark. It was a Norhika. Threw the attacker off and rolled to her feet. Blood on her lip, fire in her eyes. You fight beside me, she said, breathing hard. Jake nodded. Don't leave teammates behind. The third warrior looked at them, then dropped his weapon slowly. This is wrong, he said. She was loyal once. The leader shouted, she is a traitor. No, said the third, she is more Zarnok now than we are. Jake stared. The tension in the hallway shifted. Something broke. Something changed. The Alita stepped back, then vanished into the shadows. Not defeated, but unsure, Ahika collapsed to one knee. Jake ran to her. You're hurt. She shook her head. I'm free, she whispered. For the first time in my life, I'm free. Jake looked around. The station was still on alert. The ancient watcher could return. The warriors might regroup, but right now, in that moment, they had won something bigger than a fight. They had chosen each other. Asterisk. The station was too quiet again after the fight. After the blood and the fire, The silence felt wrong. Jake helped Rika walk down the hallway. Her arm over his shoulder, her breathing uneven. Her wounds were deep. But she never complained. She didn't wince. Didn't ask for help. He just gave it, and she let him. They reached the old infirmary. It's barely used, since most injuries were treated by drones. Jake sat her down on the edge of a cot, grabbed a medkit, and started patching the cuts on her arms. The wounds were glowing faintly. Zarnok blood shimmered silver when it was fresh. Rika watched him quietly, no orders, no pride, just eyes following every move he made. "You didn't run," she said at last. Jake chuckled. "I was going to, but I figured you'd hunt me down." A small smile touched her lips. It was the first time he had seen that expression on her face, soft, real. Like a piece of her old self had come up from somewhere deep. He finished bandaging her side and sat back. "You're not what I expected when I came to this station," he said. "None of this is what I expected." She looked down at her hands. They were still trembling, but not from pain. "You've changed something in me," she whispered. "I feel heat in my chest. But it's not anger anymore." Jake leaned forward. "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know," she said, "but I don't want it to stop." Before he could answer, the lights flickered again, this time not just in the hallway, all across the station. From one end to the other, emergency systems kicked in, doors sealed. AI voice began repeating one word over and over: anomaly. Jake jumped up and ran to the control console. He tapped the screen. The outside scanners were picking up something massive. No life signs, no power signal, just shadow and weight. "It's back," Rika said behind him. He turned. "The mist thing." She nodded, "but this time it's not sending a messenger." A rumble passed through the floor. The station creaked like metal under pressure. Jake watched as the image on the screen took shape. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't a creature. It was a structure floating, turning, watching. A black spire surrounded by rotating rings of light. Like a heartbeat in space, the Zarnok legends called it the Vault, a place of memory and punishment. Only few had ever seen it and returned. And those who returned were never the summer. Rika stood now. Even though her body hurt, Jake looked at her. Alarmed. "You can't fight that thing." "I don't think it came to fight," she said slowly. "I think it came to claim." The station began to lose gravity. Screws and tools floated into the air. Jake held onto a bar. Rika didn't move. Her body was glowing slightly now. Not her wounds, her skin, her chest. Her eyes. Jake stared. "What's happening to you?" She looked at him with no fear. "My bond isn't just emotional," she said. "It's awakening something inside me. Something dormant since I was reconditioned." Jake felt the weight of her words. "You mean the vault's not just here for you, it's reacting to you?" Rika nodded. She walked toward the main viewport, her feet barely touching the floor, her hand pressed against the glass. The spire outside pulsed once, and she gasped. "I can hear it," she whispered. "It's speaking to me in a language I shouldn't understand." Jake moved to her side. "Then don't listen," he said, but she shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I need to listen. Just for a moment." The light from the spire flashed again, and Rika collapsed. Jake caught her before she hit the floor. Her eyes were still open, but glowing brighter than ever, and from her mouth came a single word, a name, not hers, not his, something ancient, something forbidden. Its control panels shattered from a sudden burst of energy. Jake held her tight as the station shook again. She wasn't Rika anymore, not entirely, and something inside the vault had just awakened because of her. Jake held her tighter as the tremor passed through the station. Her body was cold and glowing, but her eyes were wide open, still glowing, still pulsing with the same rhythm as the dark spire outside. The control systems were offline. Gravity kept pulsing on and off. Jake was floating one moment and falling the next. He didn't care. All he saw was her face, and something inside him refused to let go. He shook her gently. "Rika, wake up," he whispered. "You're scaring me." She blinked slowly. Her pupils were gone, only white light in her eyes. Now her lips moved. The words were not hers. Not from her voice, not even from her language, but he heard them in his mind. We. Remember the pain you buried, you were shaped to obey, but born to lead, you chose the human. So you must choose fully now, Jake shouted. Stop talking to her like she's yours. She's not a weapon, she's not a tool. The light dimmed in the room, and Rika's voice returned. It was weak, but hers I saw. Everything. She whispered my memories, my lost name. The place where they broke me. Jake gently brushed her hair back. I'm here. He said, I don't care what they call you or what they want. I only care about who you are. Now tears, real tears, ran down her cheek. She had never cried before. Zarnok didn't know how to cry. But she was more than Zarnok. Now the vault outside pulsed again. A small black orb appeared in front of the station. It hovered waiting. Jake looked out the window, then back at her. What is that? A test. She whispered, a door. He frowned. A door to what? If I go through it, I won't come back the same. She said, I might lose myself, Jake. Stood. He looked at the orb, then back at her. Then I'll go with you. He said. She blinked. No one has ever offered that. I'm not them. He said, I'm just a stupid human who thinks you're worth saving, even if I burn doing it. She smiled, weak but full. Her hand reached for his. He took at the orb, responded. It grew slightly. Opened into a tunnel of swirling dark light. They walked together hand in hand through the airlock into the unknowns. They passed through the portal. Jake felt like his skin was being peeled and rewritten at the same time. Not pain, not fear, something else, like waking from a dream. When he opened his eyes again, he was standing on a white platform, endless stars above endless water. Belarica stood beside him, but she was glowing not in the same way. Her glow was warm now, gentle like sunlight after a long storm. A figure appeared, tall, no face, only light in the shape of one net. Spoke, you have passed beyond the limits of program and blood. You broke code with emotion and bent strength with kindness. You are now a bond beyond species. Jake looked at Rika. She looked at him. I don't want to go back. She whispered, then don't. He said. The figure reached toward them, and the station, the vault, the war, everything faded into dust. They stood alone in the starlight, not soldiers, not species, just two souls that found each other where no one was supposed. Torhika leaned in her forehead, touched his, and in that final moment, she whispered, you didn't tame me. She said, you freed me.